And they go on and say there was the battle of the archangels and the replacing of the earth guardian. There was a battle in our very heavens with Mars and Venus playing the major role, and the dragon, serpent, the fire in the heavens, disrupting all. Enter Satan. Too much for here, Book 5. As the second cycle of the 25,000 plus year came to an end, in our own historic time, things were again a mess, and the third covenant was called for. Now here they have these just short little paragraphs where they throw book after book of, if they'd only said it. What do you mean the loss of Atlantis? Was there an Atlantis? Did we lose it? Was it Atlantis? What was it? How big was it? Was it a little Mediterranean island, or was it, half of the Atlantic Ocean? What was it? Who were they? No information. End of the Ice Age, no information. Great Flood, no information. Exodus, no information. And going on, Battle of the Archangels and the replacing of the Earth Guardian. Replacing of the Earth Guardian and enter Satan. They replaced the Earth Guardian, and there was a battle in heaven with Mars and Venus playing a major role, and the dragon, the serpent, the fire in the heavens disrupting all. What are they talking about here? And this is 13,000 years ago, give or take. And now the third covenant was called for. So they say, and that's the name of the next chapter too, the third covenant. And they go on and say, as we said, it was obvious that the archangel was not in agreement with the second covenant and began to undermine its objectives. Now this archangel had been overthrown and replaced by one who did truly love the worship of the soul projections now entering man. The need here then was for the fallen one, this new caretaker of the earth, to become a god in its own right. What I wonder it would be to have these very children of Father worshiping it. No way to compete with Father as the God of love. All souls would know Father to be the topmost God of love. What was left? Could it be the God of evil? The antithesis of love? Was that the answer? That was the course. There you are. The antithesis of the God of love. This Satan, this guardian of the earth, this caretaker. And they say, what a mess. As a side note, there's even more complication as other groups realize that something was going on here in this tiny speck of the universe, which was a tiny speck of the shadow portion of the grid of creation. Thus, to this day, the watchers and those who would enter into the affairs of man. What a mess. What did they say? They throw so many things in here, it's almost too much. Here enters Satan 13,000 years ago. Here he is, the antithesis of love. Here he is, really wanting the worship of those soul enterings into the monkey man. Here he is, overthrowing the caretaker of the earth himself somehow, and getting in there and saying, okay, now you're going to worship me, I'm the God of evil. And, of course, you got this terrible mess. Then you throw on top of that, what did they say listen to this. Listen to how they view this. Yeah, you want to talk about different views of things. There was even more complications. Other groups of what? Other groups realized that something was going on here in this tiny speck of the universe, which was a tiny speck of a shadow portion of the grid of creation. A tiny speck of the shadow portion of the grid of creation. The shadow portion. And then they say, thus to this day the watchers and those who would enter into the affairs of man. Thus to this day there are watchers and those others who would enter into the affairs of man. Why? Because they saw something was going on here. So now not only do you have the caretaker having been overthrown and Satan taking his place, being the caretaker of the earth, but you also have these other things, whatever they are, entering into the affairs of man. Because why? Because something's going on here. Okay, so then they go on and say, in a time close to 500 BC, there was a sending of those who would bring enlightenment to man as a precursor to Christ and the start of the third covenant. At a time close to 500 BC, and if you check your religions of the world, almost all of them, the beginning of them started about 600 BC. I checked that out. That's true. So it goes on and says, in timing, this covenant was to start roughly 500 AD, but the preparation for same was to begin much sooner. With the archangel and its minions, now the adversary, a deal was struck, and the third covenant was instituted. The sons of light called for and this is what they instituted. The sons of light called for the locking of the earth system to all souls who would try to enter. That would put an end to the influx of new souls, since each new soul just compounded the problem. Earth is locked from any new soul coming here, and the possibility of them becoming entrapped. That was the first thing they asked for. The second thing they asked for, they also asked for the restriction of all but the soul's projections from entering physically, and they emphasized physically, on earth. There would be no more angels, no more gods, no more higher powers to answer the summons. No help could come physically to any one on earth anymore. They were not going to allow physical manifestations of anything but man. No more angels, no more gods, no more higher powers, no more calling the higher powers, which is what a lot of magic was. I'm going to do this incantation, I'm going to burn this incense on, and I'm going to call higher powers. It didn't do any good because they couldn't come physically anymore. I mean, I wouldn't say it wouldn't do any good, but they didn't come physically anymore. And so they go on and say, oh, there would be influences. They would come in the form of small voice, the hunch, the flash of an idea, channeling, but no more would man see the forms of those not man on earth anymore. They wouldn't see those forms. No angels, no devils, no evil things, not in a physical form. You might see them in your imagination, you might dream of them, you might this, that, but no more would they walk among men, as long as this covenant held. So they go on and say, with the summoning of those no longer possible, all magic would soon fall as a means of power, since it no longer worked. In other words, you couldn't summon those in physical form, so that's the end of magic. It wouldn't take you long to figure out that magic wasn't working. And how long would it be before the material science took the place of magic as a means of control on earth? Their question. How long would it be before the material science took the place of magic? And that's what they're saying. So then they go on and say, as we said, they called for the removal of all who were not man, as it could be called, but with one exception. There was to be a special soul chosen by the sons of light who would enter the earth influence every 2,000 years. And that's not locked. It's kind of give and take. It's kind of 2,000 some odd years. And it says that special soul was to teach those that were trapped here in the earth system, or explain really this covenant that they had, the third covenant. And I guess they'll go on and explain what this covenant entailed, but you have one special person entering the earth system to kind of be the forerunner and explain what the covenant was all about. That was the exception. And then as a side note, they say the covenant called for the prevention of any soul from entering this system, and also the prevention of any soul now entrapped here in Earth's influence from leaving the system until they had to earn the right to leave. There would be no more recruiting the sheep at Father's very throne. That ploy, discovered by the Sons of Light, was a part of the overall plan to get the sweet and innocent sheep and keep them here on earth for the pleasure of it, which was the archangel that took over, the caretaker, and its minions, those that were on its side. So, in other words, they found out that the minions of it were recruiting the sheep right at Father's very throne. They were going and saying, wow, you gotta come over to earth. It's really cool, You gotta see this. Man, this is worth going and seeing. And in they come. So they said, all right, that's it. Close the gate. You cannot enter into the earth's system, no new soul. And those souls that were already here were going to learn and learn and learn, and they weren't going to get out until such time as they qualified by having learned what it is that you have to learn. So that's what they said there, that they figured out what was going on, put a lock on that. And so then they go on, they were talking about this special soul that was going to be allowed to enter, and the only thing that was going to be allowed to enter. And so what they said was this special soul would open the gate and free those that called upon his name. Those left were given a gift of the seed of their salvation, as it were, and left to grow their freedom or not, as they saw fit. For the next 2,000 years, those who were not freed were left with reincarnation, karma, death, and those seeds. As before, those who were tickled or dominion bent remained to play until perhaps a new seed took hold in their consciousness and they too were released. So what they're saying is that the special soul came and opened the gate and freed those that called upon his name. Now you know who we're talking about. We're talking about Christ here. The first one was Christ, and he said, if you call upon my name, and that wasn't really what it was either. It was, if you understand what it was that I said and you accept it on faith, you can get out. Which is maybe how you would say called upon my name. If you call upon my understanding, if you understand what it is that I'm saying, you can get out. That's what they said.